What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my Game Week 2 preview. So as always, I'm going to go through a bunch of the questions that you put to me on Twitter and give you my opinion. So if you enjoy this type of video, give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you are new around here. And let's jump into the first question, which is about Mason Mount. There's kind of two parts to this question. So the first bit is it worth changing an £8 million midfielder before Game Week 2, or should we just wait it out? And then in this specific case for this person, I own Mason Mount already. They've got triple Liverpool and triple Arsenal, so they can't get Diaz or Saka anyway, which only leaves Kulusevski, Foden and Mahrez. Would you sell? So to be honest with you, the overall answer is I don't think there's any £8 million midfielder outside of Mahrez that I would probably sell for Game Week 2. I think they're all worthy of another chance, even if they didn't get points in Game Week 1, no matter what the fixture is. I know Mason Mount's got Spurs at home, and obviously Kulusevski's got Chelsea away. They're playing each other, but I don't think I'd sell them. You could maybe make a case for Mahrez because he didn't start in Game Week 1. There's no guarantee he's going to start in Game Week 2. It could be Grealish, Haaland and Foden as that front three again. And you can often, I've been there before, plenty of times with Mahrez, you fall into that trap where he's got a good fixture, you know what he's capable of, so you keep him in the hope he starts, he doesn't start, and then you go through that exact cycle again for the next game week. In this particular case, you might keep him because it's Bournemouth at home, and if he does start, there could be massive points on offer. But I think if you're cautious and if you're worried about those minutes, you could move him on, right? I think either way you can kind of justify it. Any other £8 million midfielder, I just wouldn't use a transfer. I think it's way more worthwhile having that second free transfer in Game Week 3, or maybe making a different move if another part of your squad isn't looking great. In the specific example where you can't get Diaz or Saka, I think it just gets even worse. I wouldn't get Kulusevski this week, right? He might be the slightly better option than Mason Mount long term. That still remains to be seen. But ultimately, they're playing each other. And unless you left 0.5 million in the bank, or you've already made the move, you can't get Kulusevski anyway because he's gone up in price. So Mason Mount might have a difficult fixture in Spurs at home, but so does Kulusevski with Chelsea away. I know a lot of people are down on Chelsea. They think they're there to be kind of exposed at the back, and Kane and Son will do really well, and they might do, but I don't think we're going to see Chelsea just collapse, right? This could be a very tight game, so I wouldn't make that Mount to Kulusevski move this week. And also, if we look at the Chelsea fixtures, if you can get past Game Week 2 without being punished too heavily, you got Leeds, Leicester and Southampton for Chelsea next. They are all good fixtures for any attacker. Okay, they don't play any of the newly promoted sides before Game Week 7, but in terms of sides from last year, Leeds, Leicester and Southampton were all really poor defences. So if I had Mount, I think I'd hold on to him. Maybe you can make a justification to go to Foden. I do think people still underestimate just how many minutes he's going to get, at least before Europe. He's got a great fixture this week, decent fixtures to come. So yeah, just to kind of sum up, if I had Mahrez, I'd maybe consider selling. For any other £8 million midfielder, I'd probably hold. In your particular case, if I was going to sell Mason Mount, the only one I would consider this week is Foden, and I'm still not sure I'd do it. Okay, so this is a good question about close decisions. So rather than talking about who the best captain is between Salah and Haaland, because that's a bit boring apparently, although I am going to talk about that as well, how do you decide on whatever the decision might be when it's this close? So what's the deciding factor if you can't split two players for captaincy, for who to bench, for who to transfer in, whatever it might be, how do you decide that? So just specifically on captaincy this week, I know why a lot of people are going for Haaland. He's got Bournemouth at home. We're expecting the City to score a lot of goals. If they do, Haaland will likely be involved. And obviously a lot of people have just transferred him in, so that's a good justification for the transfer that you're going to captain him. So that's why a lot of people are going that way. The reason Seb says it's a close decision in this case as well, because I think a lot of people still underestimate just how good Salah is. Even though they've got the trickier fixture, Crystal Palace at home, Salah's done it every single season for the last 5 years. Always great underlying stats, proven in the Premier League. Liverpool pretty much always score goals at Anfield as well. Plus he's a midfielder, so he gets the extra point for the goal, extra point for a clean sheet. So this is quite a close decision. In this particular case, I'm going for Haaland, mostly because I just see it as a bit more of a fun pick. And to be honest, sometimes fun is not the most logical way to make a decision if we're trying to maximise points. But we have to remember this is a game that's supposed to be about having fun. And having the new boy in that Man City team against Bournemouth at home with the better fixture is pretty much the deciding factor for me. There's a bit of vibes about this. I don't think Salah is a bad pick by any stretch, but I'm going to go for Haaland. If I can't captain Haaland at home to Bournemouth at home, like why am I even playing the game? That's how I'm feeling this week. I might feel a bit differently if Salah absolutely smashes it. But let's say there's two different players at some other point this season for captaincy and we can't split them. I might make my decision in different ways. There's no one-size-fits-all answer to this question. I think that's why evergreen advice for FPL is not really that good, because there are differing factors throughout the season. So let's say I have to make a similar decision again in 10 game weeks time, but I know that one player is super high owned and going to be captained a lot, and the other player is super low owned. If I really can't split them, and by the way, we're not talking about like, you know, Kane's got Bournemouth at home and Salah's got Man City away. We're not talking about that kind of decision. We're talking about when it's genuinely close. I might go for the higher owned captain to make sure that I hold rank, that I don't fall too far behind. And I know people hate hearing about effective ownership and stuff like that, but it can be a deciding factor sometimes. And on the flip side, if you're later in the season, let's say you're 75,000th in the world and you want to get into the top 50k, you might make the choice the other way. You might go for the lower owned captain, right? And it's really hard to say. You have to take it on a case by case basis, but that can happen. But obviously, like last year, if you were watching the channel, in game week 38, I had a similar decision to make where I had a choice to bring in Son or Mane on the last day of the season. I was trying to get in the top 10k. Mane was the lower owned player, but I still picked Son because he had such a good fixture. To me, that wasn't necessarily such a close decision. So we are only talking about when it's close. Another one this week that people keep talking about, for those of us with Reece James, should we play him against Spurs at home, or should we play Andreas Pereira against Wolves away, right? So should we actually bench Reece James because he's got that harder fixture? Now, for me, I don't know how close this decision is, but the difference here is I know what Reece James is about. I know that Chelsea are a pretty good defence, despite what everyone's saying. I know that he can get attack and returns. I know that he just got 2 bonus points despite getting a yellow card because of the amount of chances and stuff that he's creating. I'm still not 100% sure about what Andreas Pereira can do. I know he looked fairly attacking in the first game and he might get us a few returns, but I'm not sure I want to put him so high that he's above Reece James. So in that case, I'm making the decision based on pedigree, based on what I know Reece James can do. So it really depends. Close decisions, I think you could use a model if you're really unsure. You could use ownership if you're really unsure, or you could just go for who you think is the most fun option. In this case, that's what I'm doing with Haaland, but on another choice, it might even be ownership that is the deciding factor. So speaking of who to play, there was a lot of questions about these 3 players, right? Not everyone owns all 3. Sometimes it was kind of who to play out of Bailey and Andreas, Neto or Andreas. So I'm just going to rank them in order of who I think is the best to the worst this week. And it's pretty much as you'd probably expect. So I think the top player has to be Neto. Good fixture against Fulham at home. They did play well at times against Leeds, right? They did create a few chances. Their expected goals were pretty decent. Neto himself didn't have too many clear-cut chances, but they are adjusting to this new 4 at the back system. They've got the new signing as well. We'll have to see if he fits in from the start, but I think I would have Neto top of the list. So if you've got Neto plus 1 or 2 of the others, I would play Neto and bench the other ones, right? Next up is a little bit more tricky because, as expected, as soon as things go wrong for Aston Villa, people are starting to predict lineups that don't include Leon Bailey. I still don't think he was necessarily a bad pick for game week 1 at all. I considered him strongly, but I did say as soon as he or Aston Villa have bad performances, Gerrard might change it around because he's got so many options. I don't think I would let that put me off just yet. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't get at least one more game. You picked him in your side for a reason. Everton at home is a pretty decent fixture. I would probably play, unless we hear more that puts us off from Gerrard in the press conference, or there's loads of predicted lineups that don't have him from good sources, I would play Leon Bailey second. The reason I still keep Andreas Pereira on the bench, I know some people are saying that it's a price thing. If he was 5.5 million, we'd all be playing him. But to be honest, if he was 5.5 million, none of us would have picked him in our squads. We would have just gone for a different 4.5. We wouldn't have put him ahead of Pedro Neto or Leon Bailey. So I don't really buy that argument right now. I know people liked what they saw against Liverpool. He got into some advanced positions. We can't take too much away from that game because it was a difficult fixture against a top defence. We still don't know whether he's going to consistently create chances, whether he is going to get into really good goal-scoring positions. So I think I would prefer just to go for the other 2. So maybe there is subconsciously a price thing here, which is why I've gone Neto the most expensive, then Bailey, then Andreas Pereira. But I think that's what I'd order them. I have Neto and Andreas in my team. I'm definitely playing Neto. And unless I was to get really worried about Leon Bailey's place in the side for game week 2, I'd probably play him over Andreas Pereira as well. Alright, so this is a question from FPL Animate. If you haven't checked them out, they do have their own YouTube channel, so make sure to go and have a look at that. This is about Gundogan. So if Bernardo Silva moves to Barcelona, which could happen, they're signing absolutely everyone right now, is it fair to say, based on the first match, that Ilkay Gundogan will become the best and safest choice from Man City midfielders? And obviously we're not talking about Kevin De Bruyne because he's super expensive, right? So we're only talking like 8 million and below. I don't know if it is fair to say this. I get why people are excited about Gundogan, and he might become a great option because not last season, but the season before, he got a lot of attacking returns when he got regular minutes. Okay, he's really good at arriving into the box. Even if he starts in maybe a number 8 position and looks a little bit deep at time, he does make those runs into the box. He will get goals, will get assists if he plays. But we have to remember he's 7.5 million. So he's more expensive than Grealish. If he gets a regular run in the side, he could get plenty of attacking returns. And he's only 0.5 less than Phil Foden. And like I've said earlier on in the video, I'm quite bullish about the amount of returns and minutes that Foden will get over the next few weeks. And also, if they do sell Bernardo Silva, are they just not going to sign anyone? I know they've let Jesus go and Zinchenko and Sterling, and obviously Alvarez is coming. They're looking to sign a left back. I'd be very surprised if they let Bernardo Silva go and don't have a replacement lined up. Of course, depending on who that replacement is, will likely tell us how quickly they're going to be in the side. But even if they sign someone who's not as well known, or they don't sign someone at all, they also have Calvin Phillips. So they could play slightly more defensively, have Rodri and Calvin Phillips play as that kind of pivot, and then have De Bruyne as the guy that's going forward, who can get forward more because they've got that stability of 2 defensive-minded midfielders in behind. So look, it looks good that Gundogan started the first game and Bernardo Silva didn't. If he goes, then yeah, Gundogan does look like a great option, but I don't know if he automatically becomes the best option. Foden for 0.5 more or even Grealish for 0.5 less are definitely considerations, so I'd want to see a bit more first. Okay, so this question is about a Game Week 2 wildcard, which I know some of you are going to be thinking about. So shouldn't we wildcard to play with 3 forwards? There's Haaland, Kane, Jesus, Darwin, Tony, Bamford, Mitrovic, all of them with perfect fixtures, which I don't agree with. I mean, Kane literally plays Chelsea this week. Mitrovic has also got some pretty difficult fixtures. The rest of them do have quite good fixtures, and obviously Kane's fixtures after Chelsea are decent, etc. But to wildcard just to get 3 forwards seems absolutely mad to me. So just to answer a question specifically on wildcards first, before we come on to forwards, I don't think there's many people out there that need a wildcard in Game Week 2. Your team cannot be that bad that you can't fix it with 1 or 2 transfers, maybe take a hit and save the wildcard until you've got a little bit more information. So for most of you, you are not going to need a Game Week 2 wildcard. There will be some cases where some of you have set up a really bad team, you've got it completely wrong, and there's nothing wrong necessarily with using the wildcard in the first few weeks. Again, we've got those unlimited transfers over the World Cup, so you've got to go through less time before you're going to get to change your team again. So an earlier wildcard is not necessarily that bad, but I can't imagine most of you are in that position where you need to use it, okay? In terms of the 3 forwards, look, there are a lot of great options. Everyone's just got Haaland in. Kane could still come good. Jesus has got good fixtures. Tony's only 7 million, and Brentford after Man United, and you could even include Man United as a good fixture. They have a really nice run to come. Darwin Núñez, a lot of people are looking at, but it's 1 week, right? Are we now saying that the midfielders aren't also good options? Look at people with 4 and 5 at the back. James has just got good points. Cancelo's got good points. Walker looks good. Trent and Robertson, there's no need to get rid of them yet. If Perisic starts, everyone's going to want him. Saka's just got points. Kulusevski's just got points. Diaz still looks like a good option. Foden could be an option. There's loads of other players that are also good in defence and midfield. The idea that we should wildcard just to move to 3 forwards, when bearing in mind, most people already have 2 of these players, just seems absolutely crazy to me. So for most of you, you don't need a wild card. It might be the case that when we do use our first wild card, we move to 3 strikers, but I don't think there's a rush to do that now. Who knows? Next week, all these strikers could blank. There'll be the midfielders and defenders that are doing really well, and the narrative will shift. So, like I say, for most of you, you don't need a wild card. Definitely don't do it just to get that 1 extra forward. I know we talked about him quite a bit, but there have been a lot of questions about Haaland. So this specific one is, are there any possibilities of Haaland being benched against a supposedly easier side this early? So I'm going to go on record and say that there's almost, and I say almost because sometimes Pep does Pep things, almost no chance of him being benched this early on in the season. There's a lot of time between matches, but not only that, he is trying to get used to how City and Pep wants him to play, right? And all the other players around him, of course, they're world-class players. They can easily adapt, but they haven't played with an out-and-out number 9 that often since Aguero's gone, right? They've had other people or other players play in that position, but they're not the same as Haaland. So they're having to learn a little bit as well. They're having to adapt to how maybe Pep has changed a few things. So there's all that to take into account. And if we look at the fixtures, they've just played last weekend. They haven't got another game till Saturday against Bournemouth. Then it's not till the following Sunday they play Newcastle. And then again, it's a Saturday game against Crystal Palace. So I think these first 4 fixtures, obviously they've already played one, he'll be fine for, right? Unless Pep says he's got a little niggle or a slight knock or something like that, then maybe we worry. But I think for these first 4 games, he definitely starts. I do think there's maybe question marks over how good his minutes will be compared to Kane and Son and Salah. I think those 3 players will ultimately be on the pitch more. But I think in terms of starts, Haaland's okay to begin the season with at least. When it starts getting to like Nottingham Forest at home in game week 5, which is on a Wednesday, so they play Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, maybe we will see some rotation there, but I think because of the fixture, no one's going to want to risk taking him out. If he plays against Palace, doesn't play against Forest, and then plays against Villa, we know he's going to then be a slight doubt on midweek games, and because of all the European matches they will have as well, it might then be worth transferring him to someone else. Let's not pretend that now Haaland's in our teams, he can never leave, because it could happen, and it could happen as early as game week 5 or 6, possibly even earlier for some people. So to go back to the question, I think if you're using Haaland getting benched against Bournemouth at home in game week 2 as the reason not to buy him, that's not a very good reason, because I think there's almost no chance he'll get benched. But he's not completely, it's not like there's no chance of him ever getting benched, is what I'm trying to say. In those midweek games, there could be an issue, but I think we've got to wait and see if it happens. It's too risky to get rid of him before that. So there we go. Hopefully you enjoyed that and found it useful. If you did, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. I know one of the other popular questions was about what to do with Perisic. I really want to wait and see what Conte says in his press conference, what the predicted lineups and stuff are looking like before I answer that question. So I will do a final thoughts video sometime on Friday, probably towards late afternoon, early evening. I'll give you my opinion on that question and any others that you come up with between now and then in that video. So don't panic if I haven't mentioned it in this one. I'll try and cover it in the next one as well. So if you did enjoy that, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new around here, and I'll catch you soon for another video.